100 Thieves are champions, a new LCS organization to take home a North American championship. Huge for them. Lots of storylines to go into it. We'll definitely get into some of those. JNT, overall impressions of the weekend before we hop into one of the series.
It's just not as how I was expecting the weekend to go down at all.
I don't think anybody expected it to go down this way.
Like,
Honestly, it's like I mean, maybe some people did predict 100 Thieves. The vast majority did not.
yeah, like just obviously the way that the matches went with 100 Thieves winning, and then like them just winning kind of dominantly, like just wasn't expected at all.
Yeah, really, really crazy stuff. Blue Jay and JNT 250. This is episode 57. Let's get into the first series, which was C9 and 100 Thieves. You had C9 favored in this one. Were you at all surprised about what happened this series? I mean, maybe obviously surprised, but what surprised you? Let's start with that.
I mean, I don't know. I think I'm gonna try to keep my opinions on the series like fixated on this one and not let the finals ruin my opinion of this series. Because in this series, it felt like the teams were relatively even, but Cloud9 was just making like too many mistakes. And that was like the way that I saw Cloud9 in this series, they were kind of like on their MSI form. Where like they weren't a bad team, they weren't a good team. They were a team that could make a lot of plays, but would also make a lot of mistakes with those plays. So you know, you kind of saw like Cloud9 had really good positions in both games 1 and 2, but in game 2, you know, Cloud9 did make some big mistakes with Sven kind of overstepping in certain spots in the mid lane, something that has kind of plagued him. I feel like his whole career is. It's funny, like whenever we're watching the Doublelift's co-stream, he's always commenting about how Sven is like stepping up and hitting mid waves for no reason, or you know he's on the wave mid lane with no team around to protect him. And we saw that 2 times in game 2 where Sven is just slightly out of position for a split second and closer on a dime, just like makes that engage with the flash kick, kills Sven, and you know Cloud9 lose game 2 in a game that they're probably supposed to win.
So
So
I almost agree 100%. I'm a little bit off. The only where the only spot that I'm a little bit different than you is that the one play I actually didn't think Sven was like being too over aggressive. The one he was clearly like you have no business being up that far. The other play, closer, he queued to a minion, then ward hopped, then flashed. Like you have to be playing a mile back to think that or to be able to not get picked by that. And so it's still definitely a mistake. So I don't want to make it sound like it's not a mistake from the side of Sven, but to me that was way more of a really nice play from closer than a mistake from Sven. But I still agree with you that he is in places that he has no business being, and I mean PERKZ got picked off as well a couple of times from the Lee Sin.
yeah, but I mean like you look at the series, like game 2 is a game that Cloud9 should win. And you know, game 3, Cloud9 won as well, albeit a pretty close game as well, if not for some, you know, really nice plays by Sven actually, in that kind of like chase down team fight where he picked up like 3 kills and you know Cloud9 kind of pulled away a little bit in that game. So like looking at all the games minus game 4, they were very close games. You could argue 3 out of the 4 games that were played in this series, Cloud9 were actually the ones in the driver's seat. Game 1 was just kind of a weird game where it was like a super slow game, and FBI obviously had that crazy Aphelios Infernal multi around the Baron, which Cloud9 was trying to bait, where they basically, you know, almost get full wiped, which gives 100T control of Baron and whatnot. But this series felt like a very close series that I think could have gone either way, but Cloud9 just made too many mistakes, and you know, some of them were just like game-losing mistakes, and you just can't do that when you're this far into the season and you're this far into playoffs, where you're in the finals weekend. All 3 teams are going to be good. I know, like you know, all 3 teams might not be insanely good, but they're going to be good. And 100 Thieves, you know, this weekend they just played insanely well. Like you can't take any credit away from them of how well they played. Like this was probably the best 100 Thieves that we've seen all year for sure. Like no way did they ever play close to this level at all this season. Maybe towards the beginning of summer split, like in those first 2 weeks, where Abadage was just like extremely popping off. But you
Yep.
had players on 100 Thieves who were all playing at what felt like their peak. FBI was playing insane. Closer was playing insane. Someday was actually having a pretty good series against Cloud9 and against Team Liquid. I'll have to say that I was very concerned about Someday going into finals, going into the majority of playoffs. And, you know, this weekend, you know, he put it where kind of put his money where his mouth is in terms of his value because, you know, he had kind of been he'd been a big point of criticism for this team, and he actually did kind of show up in the finals, was able to sort of, go even with Fudge and have some good macro plays, and same with Alfari in the finals.
Yeah, I actually agree. I thought Someday had a really good weekend. The only place that I differ from you based off all the things that you said just a minute ago was that I did not think that this was the C9 versus 100 Thieves was any teams to win. I definitely think 100 Thieves looked much better against Team Liquid, and I guess by default worse against C9. But to me, they still looked like clearly the better team. I was not surprised by that. I've been pretty vocal that I don't really think very much of Cloud9 right now, and I've acknowledged many times that yes, they can all of a sudden look good, and we know that their ceiling is high. But all summer long, haven't really seen it, and I think that this series was just some more of that. Um, Too much bad to outweigh the good, and so I didn't think that this was either teams to win. I thought Cloud9 just played really bad, and I thought 100 Thieves, while they didn't play great, I thought they played good, and so I think that they just deserved the series with that alone. Closer's game two Lee Sin was maybe the best Lee Sin, probably the best Lee Sin we've seen all year. In all honesty, I don't think he had not one, not two, not three, maybe four or five even different kicks where he is just making the play and getting the pick. That was to me the best performance that he had throughout the whole weekend. And for those that did watch and know what I'm talking about, he had great performances all weekend long. But game two against C9 to me was the most 1v9, even though you could call the whole damn weekend 1v9 for closer.
No, I mean, actually, I kind of feel a bit of the opposite way about that. Like, I feel like game two was like the way that I looked at game two was if you're like an OG, North American fan or even a Cloud9 fan like myself, like Medios at Worlds in 2016, where he was having a pretty like not so great game, not finding a lot of plays, but kind of ends up getting two kicks towards the end of the game. Ironically, on the same Varus, like Maple was playing poke Varus mid lane, and like he caught him out two times in big spots in team fights, which won them the game. So I kind of feel it was more like that, where like Cluster wasn't having like an amazing game by any means. Like I know like scoreline doesn't tell the whole story, but he was like 0-4-4 before he
Yeah,
makes that first play, and like the play is absolutely insane. Like it's mechanically perfect. It's like you know maximum distance that Sven thinks he could be standing, where he does Q to the minion, he warthog flash kicks. Like, but other than those two plays, like it's not like he had an amazing game. Like I think there were a handful of games, basically every other game you could probably say was a better game out of Closer this weekend than that one, in my opinion.
yeah. See, I guess we're just gonna have to disagree on that one because he had way more than those two kicks in my eye. He had like five of them just in that game. He caught out PERKZ multiple times as well with kicks, and he might have had another one on someone else. So it's either four or five. To me, it was more than just those two kicks, and so yeah, I guess we just differ on that one. But where we do agree is his weekend was so 1v9. Like he is hands down the best player that we saw this weekend, and I don't think there's any doubt on that, right?
He was, yeah, he was the best player for sure
Yeah.
by a long
Yeah,
shot.
and honestly, when you look over at Cloud9, uh, if we're talking about the Lee Sin plays, I think Blabber had a really nice Lee Sin play as well, where he escaped. People might remember what I'm talking about, where they're running away from 100 Thieves. He takes the Q, he kicks his opponent, whatever the word is, to escape, and follows the Q to escape it while picking up the kill. That was another really clean play out of Blabber. And even though we didn't see a lot of it from Blabber, that was a play that really stood out to me as just like, wow, we all of a sudden we have some really good Lee Sin players in North America, which that hasn't really seemed to be the case in the past, in all honesty.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that like Lee Sin is a champ that's inevitably going to make a play, and the mark of a good Lee Sin is basically everything that you're doing that's not those flashy plays, because every player to date should be good enough to mechanically make those kinds of plays. Obviously, it's a completely different story, like doing it in game and executing in a high pressure moment. But I think like something to me where I'm watching like a Lee Sin performance and it's really, really good is like I think Closer's performance and more towards like his game three performance against Team Liquid, where he's just like getting so much done in the early game, consistently up in your face, like basically like skating the line between, death and like killing people and getting out with 1 HP, just as opposed to like making those plays on Lee Sin, because I feel like, that's kind of like the standard of Lee Sin is like making those plays, and it's more about what you can accomplish in the early game because Lee Sin has kind of like shifted a little bit from like a specifically early game oriented champion to more of like a mid late game with this new build with Gore Drinker Sterex, where it basically just makes you invincible and you can just dive into the back line and you know basically just be a disruptor, finding the proper angles to queue into the backline to kick a priority target, and then just heal up forever with Gore Drinker, Sterex, Stopwatch, and various W shields to allies or out of range. The champion is just pretty bonkers right now, and I think you kind of saw that with Closer, this weekend, where he was basically playing the champion to like maximum efficiency in terms of
Yes.
damage, healing, mobility. Like everything was just like picture perfect almost every game.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, what are your thoughts on Perks? I mean, I think you know where I'm going with this. I didn't think Perks looked very good at all in the series. He might have had a couple of good plays, but the bad plays are definitely the ones that stood out to me because there was just too many of them. There was obviously the game four where even in the press conference post game he was like my game four TP kind of lost us that fight and ultimately the game after that because he TPs right into the middle of a team fight, which is you can't do that as a carry and then he does that and then he ends up dying. Or a top lane they're going for a dive, he roams up as Oriana, he doesn't even use his ultimate, and then you see the who he walk away with like 2 HP and it's like just use your ultimate and kill him. Or if you're not going to use it on him, use it on the other two 100 Thieves members that are standing there. Like it felt really, really off for me. I wanted to know how you thought about it, though.
Yeah, he definitely hasn't been, his normal self the majority of this split. Um, I think he's had maybe a few games this split even, like where he's actually like playing well and not making
Mm-hmm.
a lot of mistakes because Cloud9 was making a lot of mistakes, I think pretty much all around the map. Um, in the summer split regular season, and then you could kind of see like certain players were kind of getting back to form. I think their bot lane was looking much better kind of towards the end of the regular season and going into playoffs, and even towards the start of playoffs. Sven and Vulcan have been looking good. Budge had been solid pretty much the whole year, and it was kind of on like Blabber perks where a lot of the Cloud9 problems were falling. And I think we kind of did see Blabber. He did have some great performances and showed some of his old Blabber self in the playoffs. But for PERKZ, I mean, I can't think of like one standout game that he had this playoffs across the like four best of fives that they played. The only one that I can really think of was like his game two LeBlanc against EG. Like that's the only performance where I was like, okay, that was like PERKZ smashing people.
Yeah, I know there was probably another one. I can't think of one, but in the series against TSM, I remember there
But
was
that's
one
that's
game.
what I mean. Like there's not like any standouts. Like it's
Yeah,
just pretty much like average or
right,
like
right, and
just
that's
bad
yeah,
performances.
yeah. I completely agree. Um, The other thing that I'll say is that for me, it does feel like we're not seeing peak out of any of the Cloud9 players, if I'm being honest. I think we've seen Fudge play better. Not to say that he even necessarily played bad this weekend, but we've seen him play better. And I think we've seen that out of Blabber. We've seen that out of PERKZ for sure. And I think we just all of them, honestly. And I guess the one thing that stands out for me from Fudge this weekend was he actually did have a really nice 3-man Gnar ulti in the one game that they did win. But outside of that, I don't there's nothing else that stands out. Maybe someone can remind me of something, but yeah,
It,
not much stood out that was that great.
His gangplank was very good. Once again, I thought games one and game four. Actually,
Okay,
I don't know. Like I actually think throughout this whole series, Fudge played pretty well.
okay.
He's doing really good of using gangplank as like a blind pick counter pick. Um, I don't know. I think games one and game four were really good GP games out of Fudge. You kind of mentioned his Gnar was pretty impactful in fights in that game three, and I think even his game two like wasn't too bad on the Viego. Like I don't know. I think Fudge had a solid series. I think Sven Vulcan, minus Sven's mistakes in terms of positioning, I think they had a solid series. Maybe not solid, but they were all
Hmm.
right. I just think that, well, I just think that like when if you can't just, it's just the number of mistakes for me. Like I
Yeah,
still stand by that. I think Cloud9 could have won this series, even playing at the level they did, had they not made so many mistakes. Because it was four games, pretty much every game was close except for game four. Um, and Cloud9 were in winning positions, and game two should have happened. Game one could have happened. Who knows how that game plays out if 100 Thieves basically just don't get an uncontested Baron at like 20, however 20 minutes into the game it was. I just think that I don't think the series was as 100 Thieves favored as it was despite the outcome.
I see. I see. Yeah, I guess I just disagree with that, but I definitely I guess I kind of see where you're coming from, even though I disagree with it. The reason I can see where you're coming from is because we saw what 100 Thieves could look like in the next series. And so when you compare those two, and I know that's not what you're trying to do here, but for me, when I compare those two, I could see a big difference. So I get where you're coming from in that sort of way. Did you have anything else on the C9 100 Thieves series? Because I have a lot to say about 100 Thieves, but mostly about the next series.
Yeah, we'll just get into the next one then, I guess. I don't
Okay.
really have a whole lot more to say. Just that like you just can't make this many. Like I'll say it again, but you just can't make this many mistakes when you're this deep into playoffs. Like they're gonna show, and good teams are gonna be able to punish that. And 100 Thieves, like while they weren't necessarily the team that was in the driver's seat for the majority of the series, 100 Thieves were like right there, ready to take over whenever Cloud9 was misstepping, and
Yeah.
and that's a perfectly viable strategy when a team is so all over the place like Cloud9 kind of has been.
So here's one last point that I'll use to transition over into the next series is that coming into this series, I said I fully expect 100 Thieves to get leads. My fear was that they would throw them, and even though they didn't necessarily throw them in this series, I mean they did a couple of times, but they didn't actually always lose. But where they did throw some leads is somewhere where I was afraid for them. And they took a while to close out some series or the one game specifically. They have 3 inhibs and someday just randomly dies. Like when you have 3 inhibs down and you're sieging, you should be able to close up the game. That didn't happen. So like that's where there was a little bit of sloppy gameplay there. But when we go into the next series, they didn't really have any problems at all closing out games. And so I was fully anticipating TL to win this series 3-0. And well, I mean, what can I say? 100 Thieves just absolutely stomped them. They did exactly what I thought they would do against C9, whereas they got these early game leads and they never let go. And they just I don't know, it seemed like TL couldn't keep up with them.
Yeah, it just looked like you had two teams that like weren't even in the same like stratosphere. Like games 1 and game 3 were just like such absolute stomps that is what you would expect if like Cloud9 was playing like or like old like good Cloud9 was playing like bad Immortals or something like that. Like I'm trying to think of like a comparison or like anything. It's just like when the clear best team is playing like the clear worst team. That's what that felt like because Team
Yeah.
Liquid was just like it was like super fucking hopeless. It felt like in terms of the performances, the players' reaction on cams, like when like even like during games, after the games were over, like at the press conference and whatnot, like Team Liquid just felt so deflated, and I wonder, part of me wonders if that was because they just got beaten so badly, or maybe because they just weren't as good as everyone thought they were.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm okay with seeing them not show up one day. I mean, it's a bad freaking day to not show up. Let's be honest, it's the finals. But to me, not all hope is lost. That's not how I look at it. Um, but it definitely is a worrying sign if you're a TL fan, where you saw them absolutely popping off the last couple of weeks, and then you see them come and do this in games that really matter because Worlds games really matter. So you could be very afraid if you're a Team Liquid fan seeing what you saw this weekend. What stands out for me is that the things that we know Team Liquid likes to do are the things that got totally shut down and just exposed this weekend. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about Alfari, them being able to play through him. So first of all, Alfari was able to get leads in lane. Not a big surprise. Some days playing weak side, that's what we expect. But whenever they went top to try to make plays and play through top lane, Hootie and Closer were always there and able to shut that play down. And so Team Liquid wasn't able to snowball through top. And one of the things I was afraid of from Team Liquid a month ago was that they were too predictable and that we knew they were going to play through top. Well, it looked like 100 Thieves knew that as well. And they were able to stop any kind of plays that Team Liquid tried to make in the top lane. The other area where I thought Team Liquid, what we know with Team Liquid is that Core JJ likes to roam and make plays all over the map. Huhi was following him everywhere and had an answer for everything Core JJ wanted to do. And so I couldn't believe the support gap that we saw in this series. Huhi was unreal on his Alistair. It was insane. And so those were two areas that we know how Team Liquid likes to play, and 100 Thieves wasn't phased by it at all, and they just completely outplayed them.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to kind of see the support meta that has just kind of like evolved throughout like this playoffs because I felt like this sort of style wasn't really prevalent until like Team Liquid's second series kind of against a TSM where like they did it again. Everyone was like, "Oh, wait, this is actually like a thing," because they had done it in Cloud9 specifically in that game 4 where Vulcan was playing the Rakan, and I don't remember what exactly Core JJ was playing. I just remember that was also one of the games where Jensen was playing Lee Sin, and they were playing this pretty. Oh, he's playing Shen Sport. And they were just playing this super heavy, like, we're gonna have Core JJ move to our soul laners and just help them like permanently skirmish for the entirety of early game. And we've kind of just seen that like stick from a lot of teams. Like we see a lot of
Yeah.
roaming out of Vulcan, we see a lot of roaming out of Core JJ, and normally Huhi is one to stick with FBI quite a lot because 100 Thieves does like to make a lot happen through bot lane in terms of just feeding FBI early resources with pressure in lane. First Rift Heralds are pretty much still the only team that gives solo Rift Herald plates to the ADC in bot lane, and basically, it's their early game mission to destroy bot tier 1 first, as opposed to top tier 1, which I think is what most teams sort of go for. They go for top tier 1, then mid tier 1, and then bot tier 1's like a bit of an afterthought, whereas 100 Thieves, they go bot tier 1 first, then they'll always flip FBI top lane to go get more tower plates, and then they'll send a mid lane with the second Rift Herald. So it's just like a really interesting dynamic that he kind of also joined in this like roam heavy style in this series and was just like you said matching Core JJ's plays and just shutting them down before they even begin. Because it feels
It,
like one of the things that I've really noticed in this playoffs, like with the meta and especially with supports and junglers, is they kind of move in tandem with like how the laners like to play. It's like for example, like if ever like a slow push is happening in bot or like one team has the wave on their side of the map, basically the enemy support will just instead completely shift his focus to top side and take a small loss bot lane in hopes that hey, we're gonna play super aggressive top now, and then our support is going to be here to be able to counter any plays and then maybe turn it into a 3v2 if our jungler kind of times it right and is there for counter gank. But 100 Thieves just did the same thing there. It was like, okay, Core J is gonna move. I'm gonna move as Huhi, basically match every play and just shut any Team Liquid aggression down. Shut any Team Liquid aggression down like early on, and they just like man, they just absolutely smacked them. Like it was a smacking.
Yeah, it really was. Something that stood out to me. Well, it's just been pretty clear for the last couple years. I would say the most highlighted matchup is usually mid jungle. People are always talking about mid jungle, and for good reason. And people do still talk about that. But what I'm seeing in the North American meta, and maybe it's in other regions as well. I haven't paid attention as closely as I do North America, but we're seeing jungle support being the duo that is really running the game, or at least that's what we've seen in playoffs for North America. And I wonder if that's something that we're going to see more at Worlds or not. It's something I expect to see out of North America and probably, in all honesty, out of other regions, because usually NA is one to learn from other regions, let's be honest. But it's just something that's really interesting to me to see the dynamic go from mid jungle still being important, but jungle support seeming to be the most important. What's the word? Tandem, maybe
Yeah,
synergy,
tandem.
synergy right now is what's really interesting. And if we're talking about how good mid or names, Jesus, closer and who he looked this series, you got to look at the other side and look at Santorin and Core JJ. We talked a little bit about Core JJ not being able to have his roams be successful, but Santorin was pretty AFK as well. Nothing really seemed to be working with him. We saw the really big tilt play where he tries to fight in River, and then that was where we saw they panned the camera where he
Oh
puts his
yeah.
hands on his face and knows that he messed up. Really off series out of Santorin as well, in all honesty.
Yeah, just to quickly backtrack on the like kind of meta, the NA meta development, it does feel pretty like NA only. And I think that's mainly because North American teams are usually willing to kind of just go, pick these more AFK bot lane style of champions because we are seeing a ton of poke Varus. We're seeing a lot of Ziggs bot lane. I think Jhin is kind of like slowly starting to rise in priority as this like blind pickable bot laner that you can play into like a poke Varus slash a Ziggs and that can sort of play weak side and is, you know, I wouldn't say a supportive type champion, but is that like long range artillery that doesn't need to be like super fed to be effective. And it feels like bot lane minus 100 Thieves. Like bot lane's not really a lane you're playing through right now. Like we're not seeing a lot of like 2v2 kills that are like super bloody. Whereas I feel like around the world, like bot lane is still like a premier lane of focus because, you know, if we like quickly look at like the LEC playoffs, like we're seeing a ton of action pretty much in every single lane. Teams like Mad
Yeah.
Lions, teams like Fnatic, teams like Rogue, they have really strong bot lanes who they like to play through, and we do see a ton of bloodiness in that lane specifically. Like it's not the jungler and the support going away from bot lane and making plays elsewhere. It's basically the reverse where a lot of bot lane plays are happening there. So it does feel like it's kind of NA exclusive, and I think it'll be kind of interesting to see how that would play out at Worlds if this is a meta that kind of sticks with all these North American teams and how that kind of works when you do have, these teams at Worlds who are going to be also playing very bot lane focused and play these very, 2v2, lane styles like Zyrakan. Like we haven't seen any Zyrakan in North America. I can't think about the last time we've seen Zyrakan, and that's like a pretty common pick in EU right now.
Yeah, and it makes me think about what it's going to look like when a North American team goes up against Fnatic, because for those that haven't been watching Europe, Fnatic Hylissang is a nut, and I mean that in the best way possible. He is very aggro and very effective, especially on Rakan, like we saw this past week. That guy is insane, and so it makes me wonder if North American teams think they could pick Ziggs against Fnatic. I don't think it's going to work out very well. But we'll talk a little bit more about Europe a little bit later. But just a thought that crossed my mind once you were talking about the European bot lane.
Huh.
JNT.
Well, well, yeah, I just like, dude, like, there's not much else to say in this series other than like it wasn't even close.
Okay,
Like,
I got a little bit more to say
I
if
mean,
you want me to go.
yeah, no, here, give us a talking point because I'm running out of them.
So one of the things that stood out for me in game one, where there's the big TP play bot and they get 4 kills in bot lane dive, that to me, one, points to what you were saying about with 100 Thieves wanting to play through bot lane, but also reminded me that was like throwback to spring 100 Thieves at the very start of the season, where they're having where they're absolutely destroying teams. That was their play, was early on we're diving bot and we're getting a huge lead, and over time teams kind of caught on to that's what they wanted to do, and then they started to struggle because they couldn't pull off what was their one strat. That play in game one was so reminiscent of Spring's 100 Thieves, even though that we have the new coach and Reaper over Zix, and then Demonte's gone for Abadage. It doesn't feel like they lost that identity when talking specifically about the Team Liquid series. That was one thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, they definitely seem to have, you know, they're definitely a lot more active in the early game, kind of like they were, like you said, in early 2021 and even in early summer 2021, because it did feel like they kind of lost their early game magic a little bit. Um, but I think they had solid early games against, Cloud9 where they weren't really losing per se, but they weren't gaining any massive advantages. But against Team Liquid, they were gaining massive advantages. Like the games 1 and 3 were pretty much decided within 8 to 10 minutes. Like you kind of just knew it was a wrap.
Yeah. Now, one player that I actually thought had a so-so series was Abadage. I thought that he actually had a really good LeBlanc. His LeBlanc was insane, but I actually thought his Oriana was so-so, because sometimes he had really nice shockwaves and sometimes he had absolutely horrifying shockwaves. And that to me is I, I don't think that should be classified as a good performance if you're like kind of 50-50. I think that we could still see more out of Abadage. I think we saw him have a really good summer split. And so the reason why I bring this up is because, well, I guess what I'm saying is I still think 100 Thieves can actually be better. And obviously, like, the stars need to align to have all your players playing at their peak. But I guess what I'm saying is, even though 100 Thieves looked so good against TL, I still think they could look better, which is a crazy thing to say with how good they look.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like them looking really, really good, which they did, um, my main worry for 100 Thieves is that like this is going to be a one-time thing. because kind of like you said, like we
Could be.
haven't we haven't really seen, this iteration of 100 Thieves be hitting on all cylinders. The closest thing that we got to it was probably the first couple weeks of the season, where Abadage was really really smurfing on everybody, and he was playing all these different styles and doing very very well in all of them. But we never really got to see other than this weekend, we never really saw a version of 100 Thieves where Someday was like doing decent in top lane, where Closer was absolutely smurfing, where Abadage was solid, and then FPI and Huhi were like absolutely smurfing. So, and on the flip side for Team Liquid, like I don't think like Team Liquid's ever going to look that bad again. To me, that kind of
Yeah.
seems like a bit of a one-off from Team Liquid. So I think going into Worlds, it'll be very interesting how the dynamic kind of plays out. One, in terms of actually evaluating all these North American teams, because like if 100 Thieves just like shits the bed at Worlds as NA number one seed, like one, it's gonna get memed on because it's NA's number one seed. But two, if Team Liquid does relatively well, like it's pretty easy to just make that argument and say like, yeah, we just played bad on the day, they played at their best on the day, and that's that. So for 100 Thieves' sake, I'm hoping that this is like performances that they're going to be able to carry out going into Worlds. Um, but I just hope for their sake, the community's sake, in terms of all the memes, that like this isn't like a one-off, because
Yeah.
other than the first 2 weeks of the season, I don't think 100 Thieves, like, they never reached any better than that. Like
It,
other like
it's
if you take away this weekend, I don't think you can tell me that 100 Thieves played better at any point during the season than they did in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, and that could be fair. And I actually think it's fair to bring up I don't know if I necessarily think it's a one-off thing or not, but I think bringing up the idea is fair because like to your point, we haven't seen them play this yet. So we only have seen it one time. Even though I guess some people might make the argument that the start of summer they looked this good and maybe that's fair, maybe it's not, I don't know. But I guess it's hard to say, I suppose. And then as far as the Team Liquid thing, I mean, this is definitely a copium take, but it could be accurate that maybe they needed a wake up call. Maybe they were like owning everyone in playoffs and they were just stomping everyone. Maybe sometimes you need a wake up call to say, hey, look, you're not as good as you think you are, and sometimes you need to have your weaknesses exposed. And that did happen, and that is like, I don't know, 10 out of 10 copium take, but it could be the case that it could help them.
Yeah, the series just kind of felt like Team Liquid wasn't really expecting 100 Thieves to be as aggressive and
Not
as
at all.
active as they were in the early game. Because like you kind of
Yeah.
see like Team Liquid go for a lot of these more late game team fight style of comps, which they are very very good on. Like game one, they had tactical on Ezreal and Alfari on Camille, like two champions that are way more prevalent in the mid and late game than the early game. You then kind of saw that they had a bit of a flip in style in game two, which was, the closest game of the series, albeit not that close of a game, where Team Liquid just drafted this exclusively early game comp with Callista, Braum, and Twisted Fate, and they got their early game leads, but their comp, just got outvalued by the other comp, at 15 minutes and lost because of that, and game three was just as bad as game one.
Yeah. Before we move on, I just had some thoughts about what this means the win, because there, to me, there is a bunch of good storylines and honestly some sad storylines that come out of 100 Thieves winning. The first one that comes to mind is obviously they've never won one before, and this is a new org to win the LCS. Obviously, that's huge. But then I started thinking about from like people's perspective, and I thought about the Golden Guardians. Like, this has got to feel pretty bad if you were, I mean, good and bad, bittersweet, right? If you are like the coaching staff of Golden Guardians that helped develop three of these players, or if you acquired them, if you're Danon or Hunter Lee, I thought about those guys. Like, it must be really bittersweet for them to see their old players go out and win a championship, right? Like, that's got to hurt, no?
Yeah, I mean the other like it definitely does hurt, but like it's hard to sort of attach a numerical value to how much, the different organizations increased, their performance. Like
Yes.
for
And I'm
example,
sure
100 Thieves is by far, a better org in terms of their available resources, probably the time and effort they put into the league team. They have a guy like Papa Smithy who runs the show. They did bring in Reaper and Abadage and Summer Split when they knew that this team had a ton of potential but weren't living up to it at the end of Spring Split. So, like you said, it is kind of bittersweet where you have, three players who you basically made in Closer, FBI, Huhi, and then now they just like absolutely wrecked the perceived two best teams in the league who have the best individual players and pay for the most and best individual players in Team Liquid and Cloud9.
Yeah, like you have the opposite ends, right? I think of Someday being there for so long, finally getting a big dub after people like you and myself, we were very vocal about the doubts that we had for Someday. He looked great this weekend. So like that's a good storyline right there. Like he stayed with his org for I don't know 4 years now. Maybe this is his fifth. I don't even remember. And he finally got that W. Huhi, the huge turnaround. This guy was washed. They gave the starting support spot on Golden Guardians to Keith McBrief before giving it to Huhi.
Yeah, that's
Look at what this guy was insane this weekend. So, like, that's another really feels good storyline. And then obviously Reaper getting revenge against Cloud9. Freeze, I believe this is his first championship in North America. Papa Smithy, since becoming a GM, is for like, holy crap. Obviously, Nadeshot loved it. And then there's the sadness for guys like Demonte and Zix that get kicked. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. For me, it was so interesting thinking about all the different perspectives from all these people watching 100 Thieves win, and there's so many good storylines there that I just can't pass up, and I hope people don't forget what this means to so many different people.
Yeah, I mean, I'll bring it up again just because, like, my fear is like I feel like this team's kind of like this team being 100 Thieves, like their overall image in the LCS, I feel like going forward will probably be tied to this international performance, and I feel like that's normally the case for all like
Usually is,
NA
yeah.
number one seed teams. I feel like there
TSM
are,
06.
yeah, I mean, I feel like there are a couple exceptions, but especially when a new team kind of puts itself out there like this, like, dude, I just worried that like if they go to Worlds and don't live up to expectations, they're gonna kind of have that like Alliance kind of factor, like when Alliance was like Fnatic was basically the super like was the best team in EU and it wasn't close, and then Alliance won and at the end of season 4, and I was like, oh my god, Alliance is like epic new team. They're going to be the team to beat now. They don't make it out of groups. They like rebrand, and the org is basically dead within, a couple splits. I'm not going to say that the org is dead at all, but I feel like, a bad international performance and then therefore like mediocre LCS performances could just push the image back down to like apparel brand lull, which is like kind of the memes on Twitter that were kind of happening when 100 Thieves was like really down in the dumps, kind of like the Bang Afromood days. We won't talk about that though because they just won and they're good now.
Yeah.
So when a new
No,
like
but I get your point though. I
yeah.
get your point because, and look, it's. I hope people don't think that JNT is just being a Debbie Downer here. You're not, because this is actually what happens every year. Whereas people do like it's great to win North America. Don't get us wrong here, but to your point, if they don't perform well at Worlds, people will forget really quickly. Not everyone, but a lot of people will. And so I don't think you're being a downer, and I hope people don't think JNT is being a downer with this, because I think what you're saying is right.
Yeah, because I think like for example, if 100 Thieves was the second or third seed and they didn't play as well, like it's obviously, not as relevant if you're, NA's second or third seed and you're in a very hard group as opposed to being the first seed and having a perceived advantage because you don't have to face off against the number one EU team, the number
Yeah.
one LCK team, the number one LPL team. And I feel like maybe I do sound like a bit of a Debbie Downer in terms of like 100 Thieves success. Like I'm really glad for them. I'm kind of like forecasting that like I feel like their LCS relevancy is going to be really dependent on this world's performance.
I
And
think
for
you're right.
their
We saw
sake,
what
I want it
happened.
to be good.
Yeah, and we saw what happened with TSM last year, whereas like the meme is 06. Now that could maybe be why, I mean, it is enhanced because it is TSM, but I think the idea is still the same that especially from international fans, I mean, North America is always the target. So people will tear you down if you don't perform well internationally. And to be fair, it is what all of us want to see. I don't know if I speak for everyone here, but I definitely speak for myself in saying that I am more interested in a team doing well internationally than winning North America. That's just kind of how I am, and it's to
Yeah,
each their own how they feel about it. But either way, I'm still so happy for 100 Thieves. Like I said, so many good storylines. I won't name them all again because there's a bunch of them, but it did feel good to see them win. It was really, really exciting, and it's nice to see some change in the LCS for who's taking the championships home. We're gonna see a new banner. Let's go.
Yeah, a new team banner. There's like
Yeah.
C9, TSM, Team Liquid, those couple CLG ones, and now it's like we got 5 of them now.
It actually, I can't. It's so stupid. It's a banner, but I can't wait to see it because it's a new one. So that'll be really nice to see whenever that does happen. You want to move on?
Yeah, sure.
So last few weeks we've done a ranking 1 to 10 for teams that were eliminated, and so we hadn't really planned on doing one this week. However, I will shout out, I think I'm saying his name right, Cygnus. He's in Twitch chat every once in a while, who said like, I can't wait to see what you guys rank this week for, I think it was Cloud9. And I said, well, we didn't really plan on doing that this week, but he said he really enjoyed it. So you know what, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it for all the teams anyways, even if they're not eliminated. We're going to run back the 1 to 10 ranking, 10 being you're really happy with how the split went or how the year went, 1 being you're not happy with how the year went. I think we're going to start with 100 Thieves, right?
Yep.
So actually, and on that note, shout out to everyone that interacts with us on Twitter. I see people interacting with myself and J&T, and sometimes in Discord and all that stuff, and in Twitch chat. Look, I can't name all the people, and it would take forever to shout all you guys out, but we do really like the people that interact. Some people leave YouTube comments. I think it's a good time to shout that out. While I'm shouting out one, I should shout out the rest because, well, I don't know, our community is pretty cool. It's small, but it's pretty awesome to have some communication with you guys, and we always appreciate you guys reaching out. Now, let's get into the 100 Thieves one. J&T, 1 to 10. Where did you put them?
Well, despite my perception as a Debbie Downer, I mean, I think you still got to go with 10 because,
Absolutely.
I did tweet this out. I think going into playoffs, in my view, 100 Thieves felt like the least likely team to win it all out of, the ones who were, contending for the title, which were Cloud9, TSM, Team Liquid, Evil Geniuses, and then 100 Thieves. I kind of felt like based on the trajectory of all these teams and even the outcomes of like the first couple playoffs matches, like it just felt like it was probably going to be Team Liquid. If not, it was probably going to be Cloud9. And if not, it was probably going to be because EG beat Cloud9 in the lower bracket because how hard EG had basically been dominating Cloud9. But, in my books, 100 Thieves kind of flipped the script on everybody, ran through finals weekend. I think I would even call the season, a success, even if they finished third or second in terms of
Yeah,
like getting the seed,
absolutely.
because I think not that I don't know if this was a worlds or bust team. I think it kind of was,
I
and
think it was.
well,
I was going to ask that as well if you remembered what they wanted to do at the start of the year.
well, I don't know about that, but when they did acquire Reaper and Abadage, it still felt like a worlds or bust kind of move. But even at
Yes.
that time, like when they made that move and we went into summer split, like Cloud9 and Team Liquid were still much better teams, and TSM was not far behind 100 Thieves because they beat them so dominantly in spring playoffs, and TSM clearly kind of weren't that far below Cloud9 and Team Liquid at the time. And so, like, I think it would have been not, it wouldn't have been completely fine, obviously, because if you're 100 Thieves, you don't make Worlds, you're pissed. But like, it would have been understandable if this team didn't make Worlds instead of like a TSM or instead of an Evil Geniuses, just based on kind of how the season went. But for them to just like show up like this, win finals, closer playing as insane as he is, FBI Hui as well, like it just has to be a 10 for me.
They they got to ban Viego, man.
Well, I don't know how that champion is still like allowed being is like getting games played
Yeah,
because it
well,
feels like no matter what
especially
region is
closers,
picking it.
right? Like especially with closer, like that guy is styling with VA. I mean, mind you, he was also pretty damn good on Lee Sin, and just about anything he played. His Diana was great. He even pulled some Olaf bans in the series as well. But anyways, closer's really good. We've kind of talked about that a lot already. For me, I also went a 10 because I think, and someone if someone knows that I'm wrong here, feel free to correct me in the YouTube comments. But I think their goal was Worlds. I'm pretty sure. Um, so if your goal is Worlds and you win the LCS, hell yeah, 10. Like, why not, right? Um, Especially with making some big changes in the middle of the season. Like, they make these changes because they think they're going to work, right? You don't make a change if you think it won't work, but you can be nervous that it won't work. For example, PERKZ came over and hasn't worked so far, but Abadage did for the most part. And Reaper has, I mean, as far as we know, it has. It looks like they're getting better as playoffs goes on. So how can you go wrong there? I don't see how it could be anything lower than a 9, but for me it's just a 10. I think they reached their goal and got more out of it than just what their goal was. So I had to give them a 10.
Yeah, I think that one was the easiest one
And
to
if well,
pick.
if anyone saw the videos that they put out on Twitter with popping champagne bottles, or trying to anyways. Abadage literally spiked a champagne bottle on the ground because he couldn't open it. You
That
got
was kind
Nate
of
Shot,
funny.
who's like trying to carry a big speaker, but he's too hammered that it like he drops it and it falls. Like, I think they were pretty happy in their celebration. They were a little bit intoxicated, if you will.
Most likely, I would have been the same.
Yeah. Let's go TL next.
Yeah, I think this one. I think in
I
my
had a hard
opinion,
time with this one.
yeah. But I mean, uh, I think it was hard to decide. But in all honesty, I think the options were pretty limited in terms of the score you could pick from.
What did you give?
I think I ended up on like an 8
Okay.
because looking at the season, you pick up a player like Alfari, who is by far and away the best laner in the league. They ultimately kind of didn't get it done at the end of things, and had a very disappointing series against 100 Thieves. They did look pretty depresso mode, on like the player cams during the games, like right after the game ends with the confetti and everything, and then during their post-game press conference with the tactical, getting a bit emotional and Santorin kind of visually being pretty disappointed. But like, despite all the struggles in summer split, they finished as the second seed.
Yep.
It's honestly not that bad in the grand scheme of thing in terms of like, yeah, maybe their performances across the entire summer split weren't what they were hoping for in comparison to spring split when they were playing really, really well in spring split and were so close. You could argue a Santorin migraine away from maybe winning spring finals and representing NA to MSI there. But
Yep.
like ultimately, they finished as the number 2 seed in North America. They had some really great playoff series against Cloud9, against TSM, and against 100 Thieves the first time around. And other than a bad finals, like there's not much you can say was bad about the season, in assumption that they've resolved all this drama.
Right, which we don't even know for sure because I mean, what was let
I
out
think
was
they
that
have.
it ended with Jat, but we technically don't know if that's true because Cold was one of the coaches that Jat really wanted to bring in, and so I mean, we're getting way too far into speculation on whether it does or
I
doesn't
think it's
exist
all. I
anymore.
think it's all good.
We think so. It
Yeah.
definitely seems that way because they started to play really well. But anyways, I went with a 7. So not far off from that you gave. I think that I wonder if I would have given 8 if they lost like 3-2 or something. But look, okay, coming into the season, you probably want to go to Worlds. That's a given. But I do think TL wanted to win, and they didn't necessarily win. But you can't call their season a failure. So I don't think you couldn't give them anything 5 and lower, for sure. But all the shit that they went through with the migraines, like you said, with having to replace coaches and with things really looking bad, being able to turn it on in playoffs all of a sudden and look really, really good is something you have to be happy with. It's just the 3-0 that probably takes it away from an 8 to a 7. And then if they win, I probably just give them a 10. That's what they wanted. You're going to Worlds, you represent, like, I think you get them a 10, but they got absolutely stomped. And so it really leaves a sour taste in your mouth at the end of what was a miraculous season. Everything was going wrong, and then you turn it around, you're about to win, you're the favorite, everyone thinks you're going to win, and then you get hard clapped. I had to go 7, but I wonder what other people think about this, honestly.
Yeah, I don't even know if like the result of the series would have affected my score. Like even if it was like a close 3-2, it's hard to give them any worse or better score because it's like the same outcome at the end of the day.
But it is
Obviously,
how they feel, right? Getting 3-0'd is that's embarrassing, you know?
well, I mean, yeah, but it's our score. I don't
Yeah.
care about they feel.
Okay.
How I feel.
Okay. Sure.
All right, we'll go Cloud9 now.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't think this one was that hard, honestly. Just
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I went with an 8 as well.
Okay, wow.
Because similar to Team Liquid, I feel like it's hard to be super disappointed in yourselves. I think you can obviously be disappointed in comparison to the results that you achieved in Spring Split. Obviously, winning the split and going to MSI to rep NA at Worlds. Obviously, MSI didn't
That's true.
go
MSI
as
does matter though. It does.
MSI didn't go as expected. I still think Cloud9 was still like their performances were getting overshadowed by the Blabber Ints because they did put up some really quality games against Damwon, RNG, and Mad Lions, and those had kind of been lost in the wind with their mistakes that they were making in those games, which were bad mistakes, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, looking at Summer Split, it was clear from the get-go that they weren't going to be as good as they were in spring split, or at the very least, it was going to take a lot of time because you don't just take a player out of your starting roster with 1 week into the season, 1 week until the start of the season, and expect things to go the same way that they did in the previous season. And we kind of saw Cloud9 didn't really have much of an identity. They were still kind of struggling and trying to get their form back in those early parts of the split. Blabber was still not looking very, very great. Um, but the main thing I think you can take away from the season that was a really huge positive was that their big concern for all of 2021, which was fudge, in terms of like if this team is going to be a good team, their one big problem is going to be fudge, and it feels like that's not much of a problem anymore. And their problems are actually, some of their more veteran players like PERKZ and like Blabber. But what, gives, a little bit of copium in my 8 out of 10 score is that we have seen these players perform much, much better. And we have kind of seen like when the time comes and, with enough preparation and, it's hard to ignore PERKZ's Worlds performances over the last 3 years now. 3 years on G2 in season 8, 9, and 10, how good that guy does play internationally. And I think honestly, like this is kind of the perfect scenario for Cloud9 because I think the way that they're looking right now, they need play-ins as a test for them to one prove that they belong there and kind of give them some warm-up games going into main stage if they make it there.
So you bring up some good points. The reason for me it was actually really difficult to rank them, honestly. But anyways, I'm going to come out with it and just say I gave them a 5. But reasoning. So I like the point about Fudge looking really bad and then turning out to be good as the split went on. The only thing is for me, when I'm thinking about how happy they are, I think coming into the season they didn't expect Fudge to be that bad to start. Maybe you expect, a new player to struggle, but I mean, he really, really struggled. And so for me, the expectation before we had even seen him play was he shouldn't have been that bad. And obviously, you wouldn't replace Licorice unless you thought you had a good top laner.
But
So
at
in
the
the
same
end,
time, I don't think everyone was expecting him to be as good as he turned out to be.
maybe, and I mean, sure, but regardless, I don't. Anyway, I don't think that. For me, it doesn't start with after seeing him play bad to start. If that makes sense. Like when I start, like how happy they are from where the season started, it's before they played games. So that's where I'm looking at it. So you have a good top laner. To me, that's probably about on par with where you want to be. Maybe a little bit better because, like you said, some people didn't think he would be that good. So that's fine. The other area that I struggle with is that I think going to MSI is a big thing to be happy about. But when they went there, a lot of their games were just so troll because Blabber's just inting for crab that sometimes you don't necessarily get much out of those games. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure they still definitely learn things, but I think you're supposed to get more out of MSI than they probably did because a lot of their games were just hard trolling. And I don't know if you get anything out of all of those games. So that's a problem.
Well, one
Where I
one
go
thing,
with a
one thing. If sorry, if I
Go
can
ahead.
just say something here.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I think the reverse argument can actually be made that like it was good that they played bad at MSI because I think one of the main issues in Cloud9 in 2020, we're talking about a lot of the players on that team were saying that they didn't get that sort of kick in the ass at MSI
Yes,
that
absolutely.
they probably got in 2021. So, we could have seen like the same exact world where like in a world where MSI doesn't happen and Cloud9 just kind of has that same mentality and play style, it goes into summer 2021, like dude, they could just like flame out in playoffs again. So I think you're completely right, one, in saying that like, yeah, you went to MSI, it wasn't what you hoped, but at the same time, like you did learn some lessons that you probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere else.
Yes, and I'm gonna oversimplify this, so just understand that when I say this, this is an oversimplification. But I do wish they walked away from MSI with more lessons than, oh, just don't int that crab forehead. And I know they
Yeah, yeah.
did, but a lot of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like that's their main takeaway was that, and that's where I'm a little bit
That
upset
make
for them
that
for.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but anyways, as far as your expectation coming into the year, I don't think Worlds is all of what they wanted. I think they expected to win the split. Now, mind you, they did win Spring. I don't want to forget about that, right? But I think by the end, you expect to be the best team. And I don't really think they're even close to being the best team. I think they're definitely third. I wouldn't even be surprised if like you could make the argument that TSM is just as good because that series was really close. I would take C9, but the point is you were one game away. Like they were one game difference of complete failure. And so that's where I can't give them a 7 or an 8. They barely scraped by. Your star player is looking like maybe your worst player. So I'm really afraid for them. Now they've got about a month to turn things around. And I mentioned this on Hotline tonight that if you have a good world performance, no one cares anymore, myself
Yeah,
included. Like that's what you really want is the world performance. So it can be salvaged. But what you've got so far isn't anything crazy to be super excited about. And so that's why I say 5, because I think anything below a 5 is you're not happy, and anything above a 5 is you're happy. I think they're kind of meh. Like we expect to go to Worlds anyways, and so the rest of their season will definitely rely on the Worlds performance as it should be. As it should.
yeah. I think where our score lines kind of differ on like kind of the Team Liquid and Cloud9 front is like, you were kind of you were taking the score with, that team's expectations themselves, where I felt like I
Yep.
was going more of like a what I was seeing on the screen in terms of their performance and whatnot
Yeah.
relative to that, because I think people kind of recognize that, in the summer split, Cloud9 wasn't the best team, and I think, at the end of it, to get out and make worlds with a couple of your players looking as bad as they were, is a good thing. And it doesn't matter how you get to worlds, it's that you make worlds. And like you
Okay.
said, if you're a good team, the performances will shine through. And I think honestly, with the situation that we have for Cloud9 right now, I think they're in the best case possible scenario where they're the third seed. They're kind of like the underdog. They don't have this kind of pressure and expectation on them like they did at MSI when they were like looking like such a strong team. And they're going to have these kind of warm up series and be able to get a bit battle tested before they get thrown into the wolves against like number one, number two LPL LCK teams.
So I will say that I actually am worried. I think they will get out of play-ins, but I will admit that I am worried that they won't. If I were to predict, I'm saying they're getting out, just to be clear. But yeah, God, they're not impressing me right now, and they've got
Yeah.
a long ways to go.
What I
Now,
will say
before
is, what
no,
I
no,
will
no,
say about
go ahead.
World's plans is it is designed pretty much so that the lowest seeds from the major regions, it's designed so that they can get out, and it does take some really, really bad performances to not get out. Mad Lions 2020.
We saw
Um,
Mad Lions not
but I
make it
mean,
out
other than that, like that was like only the first time that a major, like a
region,
bottom seed from a major region didn't make it out of plans. So
right?
while I expect them to get out as well, I think it would be very surprising, and like that would be like a pretty big failure if Cloud9 didn't make it out. I feel like specifically on Cloud9, it's very tied to their world's performances.
One last thing that I did want to get into before moving on to other things is I talked about this on Hotline League tonight, and JNT, I wanted your opinion. There was a lot of lot of reactions. A lot of people really liked it. A lot of people really didn't like it. So I thought, well, then why not bring this controversy over to our podcast? Here is my take, JNT. As I wrote in the Discord, it's time we accept that the PERKZ signing has been a huge disappointment. His good performances are too few and far between. This does not mean he can't turn things around and erase it all with a good Worlds performance, but he's got a long way to go at this point. My reason for the take is not to hate on PERKZ, but for fair accountability for all players. And then I went in to say that things like if I made the point that if Jizuke was playing the same way, people would be like, oh, coin flip. But like I don't see that out of PERKZ, and I don't think the accountability is there for PERKZ. And so I wanted your take on it. Am I being too harsh? Not harsh enough? What do you think?
I just think like the story's not over yet, so we can't
Yep.
make a definitive statement.
Yeah,
In
and
in a
that's
in a
where I
world where Cloud9 flames out of worlds, let's say they make it out of plans, but they do bad in the group stage and they don't make it out. I I don't know, what was your wording? Do you say disappointment or failure?
I said has been a huge disappointment.
I would
Has
think,
been, and then I said his good world performance or a good world performance could erase all of it. Is basically
yeah,
what I said.
I think you kind of answered in the question. You're like yourself there. Like if Cloud9 has a good Worlds performance, I don't think anybody's going to care about how Summer Split went down. Like you're going to be judged on your Worlds performances, and
Yeah.
I think there's still a world where like Cloud9 can get in like a group of death scenario where they have two of the best teams in the world in their group, and like they go 3-3 or something and don't make it out. Like I think obviously everyone is going to tie results to a player's performance. But like, I feel like when you're at this level, you kind of have to separate like your team's performances from a player's performance, because like players can have a really good worlds and not make it out. Like PERKZ can
Yep.
have a really, really good worlds, and it's other failures on the Cloud9 front. Like let's say Blabber's a huge problem at worlds, or Fudge is a huge problem at worlds, and PERKZ is actually one who's playing very, very well at worlds, and maybe they don't make it out. Like it's hard for me to say that it's a disappointment, because while he didn't maybe have the domestic success that he wanted in the summer split, like they won spring, they went to MSI. He might have gone to Worlds and had a really good World. So I do think that
Hmm.
a lot of the final grade of NA PERKZ, it'll be decided by Worlds, and I think ultimately, it'll be a pretty good indicator for Cloud9 if they want to keep going with PERKZ, considering how much money he probably costs. I would have to
Right.
think that, if Cloud9 flame out of Worlds, it'd be pretty hard to justify, well, flame out of Worlds and PERKZ has a bad performance. It would be pretty hard to justify him keeping him on your team when
Right.
if you think that money can be spent elsewhere, either getting just as good of a mid laner for cheaper, and then maybe using that to bolster up some of your other roles if they underperform, like in a world where like another Cloud9 member shits the bed and they want to move on from him, something like that. So I don't know. I don't think I'm yet ready to make a definitive statement, but I think the current path that we're on, that could be an accurate statement.
Yeah, and what do you think about the accountability side? Do you think that he's been held accountable by fans and by the analysts and whatnot?
I mean, that's hard to say, because, to kind of quote Fudge here a little bit, like a lot of the people who are doing a lot of this like outcry about players and player performances, like dude, their opinions are like kind of bad sometimes.
The
Like,
Fudge classic.
yeah, like I don't know, man. Like if on my own end, like I feel like on this show we've talked a lot about how PERKZ is playing badly. So in terms of
Yep,
us two, I would say we're holding PERKZ pretty accountable for,
I think so
Cloud9's
too.
performance. But, you do look at some of the like super copium takes that are on Twitter or are on YouTube that are even from like people on the LCS analyst desk. Like you kind of see it in like their really troll, like completely dog shit like power rankings of players, which I feel like anytime any personality comes out with one of those, we're always like, wow, this is like so wrong on so many levels. And it does feel like PERKZ, you know, I don't think he's been getting some flame, but I don't think as much as like we give him on this show. You know what I mean? Kind of like,
Yeah, I definitely think that we do, but of course, like there's bias there, right? Like I think it's more up to our listeners to decide if we're being fair or unfair when it comes to, well, honestly, anyone for that matter. But where I like in that same way, I look at like Double If, Sneaky, and Meteos, for example, and I think they are being fair. Like when PERKZ makes a bad play, they're like, PERKZ is trolling here. Like,
yeah,
and I think they do a good job. The fans, however, I actually don't. And that doesn't mean everyone. I know there's probably people listening going like, I've been very critical. Well, like not everyone, but what I do see is a lot of people that are upset that PERKZ isn't getting praise when he makes a nice play, and it's like, dude, those plays are too few and far between for me to give praise to a player when I see him running it down more than carrying. So that's where like, and that's where I get a little bit fired up about this, is that it's like if the nameplates were off and it was another player, I don't think people would be defending him as much. And so it's not a I hate PERKZ, but I do think players should be treated equally as far as their gameplay is concerned.
yeah.
And so that's where the frustration comes from me, and that's why I made the take in the first place. But clearly, a lot of people didn't agree with it. I think more people agreed with it by the looks of Twitch chat, but there was definitely some people that didn't. Let's put it that way.
What I will say is, I think he's been getting the rightful criticism in terms of his performances, like actual gameplay performances. But it does sort of feel like there is this thing where whenever people do talk about PERKZ, it's like, oh, but playoff PERKZ, or
Yes,
but Worlds, like PERKZ at Worlds. And I
and we've
think,
brought up playoff
yeah,
PERKZ too, though.
but
Like
I
we're
mean,
guilty of
I
that.
think that's totally a fair argument to make. It's just the longer and longer that he continues to underperform, the worse that argument and sort of narrative becomes. So
Yeah.
like if PERKZ does have a bad Worlds and he's like a big problem for Cloud9 at Worlds, whether it be plans, whether it be made stage, I like then you really kind of, you got to look at it and be like, hey, this guy was just playing bad, and like he didn't turn it on, and the magic wasn't there.
Yeah, couple quick points that I want to make before we move on. One is I just want to remind people that Cloud9 let go of Niski for him, who's been looking pretty good in Europe. and definitely looked better when he was here. So that's
That's
a quick
results-based
thing.
analysis.
Sure, I mean that's what it is though. We're talking about their results, and well, they haven't looked like he hasn't looked good. That's we're literally discussing results, right? So yeah, like it should be. The other thing is what was my other point? Oh yeah, the post that there was a Reddit post or something about accountability. Just to be clear, I did not see this post whatsoever. So I don't know what was in. I don't know anything about it. I know Vedius made a tweet saying he didn't like the post. I don't even know what was in it because it was taken down. So for people, if you think Blue Jays all for this Reddit post, I don't even know what the Reddit post was. So I have no idea. Yeah, just to throw that out there. To be clear,
Yeah, it.
not saying for or against it. I don't know what it was.
I don't know what it was either, but I did hear some talk about it.
Yeah, the post was taken down. So I mean, maybe it's somewhere on the internet still. Usually, when something's on the internet, it doesn't go away. But I haven't found it. So anyway, there's that. Do you want to move on to Spica?
Sure, yeah.
Let's talk about Spica. First of all, this guy's fucking hilarious. I mean, that's a total side note and
Did
has
you?
nothing to do with anything.
Okay, this is like kind of off topic, but there's kind of like this new, one of the new memes. You know how like,
Yes,
so
yeah, that's what
like,
I was going to
dude,
talk
like
about.
when people like you'll like message somebody on Discord like, hey, can I vent to you? And it's like, people say vent as in like, let off some steam and like, like you normally you're gonna shit talk somebody, and then everyone like throws up the Among Us venting thing, and I've seen so many screenshots of it on Twitter, and even like in my own friend group of like people doing it. Like, dude, like one happened to Tommy. Like, did you see that on Twitter?
Yes, a good friend
Oh,
of ours. Oh
fucking
my god, that was
hilarious.
hilarious. So good because
And then he,
he's
dude, and
pissed.
Spica did it to Bjergsen. Oh, that was so
Yes.
funny.
Okay, Bjergsen is the perfect guy to do it to as well. Like,
Yeah.
first of all, it's Bjergsen. Like everyone knows this guy. But also Bjergsen has been he said in the past he doesn't like social media and he doesn't really go on it that often. So it doesn't surprise me that Bjergsen doesn't know that this exists. And
Yeah.
Spica's just hilarious. That guy's just a great troll. So it was like it's too good knowing Spica and knowing Bjergsen that like anyways, I just absolutely loved it. But the reason why we're bringing up Spica is because he got the MVP vote, as we expected, right? I think that was pretty obvious.
Yep. I think after we saw the results of the All Pro voting, it was pretty much like it was going to be Spica for MVP. It was clear. I
And
think
like we said last week that we didn't think he wasn't our MVP, but that
I
doesn't
think it
mean
was
that he didn't have a
close.
good season.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
think I
doesn't mean
think
that
it
he hit.
was
Yeah,
like it was like 60-40, 55-45 for Closer and Spica in my books. And I think, there is a lot of like hindsight kind of talk going on right now because of how
yeah,
hard Closer was smurfing this weekend. It's like,
right.
oh, well,
Yeah,
like Closer could have been MVP as well. It's like, yeah, but it's regular season. But yeah, like man, like
but we
Closer had a
said
really
this
good
for a
regular season.
while though,
Yeah,
man.
like we've
We
been
said
saying
this
this.
for yeah, so like I don't feel bad about saying it now. I think my ballot would have gone Jizuke then Closer then Spica, but again, that's not really a knock to Spica in my opinion. It's more like I just thought that those other guys were really fucking good. But anyways, it's really nice to see Spica win it just because I don't know, I'm a fan. Like I love Spica. He's hilarious. I
Yeah.
love him. Love
But
him.
I will say, TSM they've not put out their newest TSM Legends episode.
You
So
can't
come on,
wait to get
man.
on that.
I am gonna salivate watching that. It's
Yeah.
gonna be great.
A lot of people can't wait to see that one. There's a lot of people that want to see them struggle in their TSM Legends. But,
Yep,
anyways,
me
let's get
included.
to our awards, right? Popoff,
Yeah.
you or me?
You go first.
Uh, if it wasn't obvious, it was Closer, but I'll be more specific. I thought his game two was amazing in the C9 series. I had already picked him for Popoff at that point. He just carried the rest of the weekend and looked amazing the rest. I know you, J&T, didn't really like his game two that much. I thought it was
I didn't. It's not that I
unbelievable, and I thought it
didn't
was the
like
best we've
his
seen.
game too. I just didn't think
Sorry,
it
I
was
should say
like.
not as much as I liked it. I
It
should say
just
I should be
wasn't
more.
like you made it sound like it was some like worldly performance that was like, oh my god,
It
beast mode,
was,
beast mode.
man.
Like it
It
was.
was beast mode, in my opinion.
It was
Anyways,
like a
it was.
43-minute game in which he was doing stuff for like 10 of those 43 minutes.
Dude, his picks were
They were
so
good. They were
freaking
good.
insane, man. And there were so many of them. Anyways, we obviously that we disagree. That's fine. That's not the first time, not the last time. So, anyways, I went with Closer's game two, Lee Sin. That was to me the most impressive thing of the weekend. What did you go with?
I I'm gonna have to go with Someday because I was shitting on him. I don't know, maybe not shitting on him, but I think I was heavily criticizing him because I did think that he was going to be one of the factors that kind of held 100 Thieves back. in the playoffs because I think I was quite worried for him going up against players like Fudge and players like Someday. And I think, he just did a solid job of playing defensive and doing what he needed to do while still having great impact in team fights. Because I think recently Someday has been sort of a player who isn't the strongest in lane, but also isn't really having a lot of impact in these fights. But you did kind of see in both the series against Cloud9 and against Team Liquid, yeah, Fudge and Alfari were able to gain advantages in lane, but Someday was like heavily able to outvalue those advantages gained by his opponents in lane by plays around the map and by having impact in team fights. I thought the Shen pick in that first game in the series against Alfari in the finals was really really good. That champion seemed to just be non-existent other than that one Core GJ support game. I can't remember the last time we saw Shen. I think it was probably most likely Impact playing it at some point in the regular season. But I thought
River
that was
Shen, the core
yeah
JJ, but
yeah. But I think that was like a super creative pick that I wasn't really
yeah.
expecting, and I think he did a lot of work on. Yeah, I just thought while relative to my perceptions of Someday and his performances in the past, I think this weekend was really good out of him. And I'll
That's
give him,
commendable.
yeah, I'll eat my words on that one and give him some credit.
You get a pop off, JNT. I respect you giving the guy his due after you were, and I was also critical of him. But yeah, respect. Beansoup. I had a couple of ways that I could go with this. Neither one was on the Rift. Um, I guess I'll just say both of them real quick. The
Okay.
Meteos stream, I don't know if you knew about that, but he couldn't get his stream up. And as you guys know, Meteos fanboy, wanted to watch the Meteos stream. I mean, I still watch Double Lift and Sneaky, which is still great, but that was disappointing. The other thing, and this is the one that I really thought was Beansoup, was the sixth man thing.
Oh no.
That
Stop.
was weird. Like they're trying to steal the football thing from the Seattle Seahawks, like the 12th man.
It
For
was
people
like,
that don't
yeah,
know,
well,
go ahead and explain it,
for people that don't
JT.
know at all, if you were watching LCS, and I assume you were if you're watching this in the first place, basically you've noticed how they're always like showing a bunch of Verizon sponsored tweets at the bottom of the screen throughout the series. And for the finals weekend, was it even just this weekend or has it been all playoffs? But basically they had this
I think it was
hashtag.
just this weekend.
I think
I
it was
think it
just
was
this
just this
weekend as
weekend.
well. But I mean, since they've started doing this, it's been Verizon sponsored. But they did this specific hashtag for the finals weekend called Sixth Champion. And it's basically a play on the Seattle Seahawks, who are in the NFL, whose fans are basically classified as the 12th man because there's 11 players on the football field at any given time.
And
And
being loud is a
so,
big advantage in football.
yeah, like
So
home team
you're
advantage.
helping
It's
the
like
team. Yeah.
but like for esports, it's like you're tweeting on social media, like the players don't even see or hear that. It's like on the broadcast screen. It's annoying. The hashtag sucks. It's like, oh man.
That ain't no sixth champion because I made a tweet, let me tell you. I
It's just
appreciate the effort from the LCS, but it's pretty it's kind of cringe, not gonna lie.
it's a bit cringe.
I always give the LCS credit for trying things. I just think they swung and missed here. They're trying new
Yeah.
stuff. That's okay. This ain't it. In my opinion, anyways. Maybe some people really liked it. I don't know. Anyways, what was your bean soup?
Um, I kind of just had to give it to like the finals. Like it just wasn't like
Mm.
I feel like it was one of the worst finals of all times in terms of like expected results and performance and entertainment. Like again, not to be a Debbie Downer because I feel like I'm doing it a lot this episode,
Well, I
but
think that's
like
more of a TL bean soup if you ask me. 100
uh,
Thieves came to fucking play, man.
that's fair enough. Okay, that is fair enough. But I just meant like as a fan watching the series, like
Yeah.
I didn't care who won the series. I think going into it, I was expecting TL to 3-0 them based off of TL's previous performances and 100 Thieves, decent performance since Cloud9, but like I said, I felt like it was more Cloud9 screwing up. I felt like we were going to get a really entertaining series, and the only other finals that I can think was like lowest in terms of entertainment value was like the previous Team Liquid versus 100 Thieves finals from like season 8 spring, because it does kind of feel like when summer rolls around, we always have these really, really hype finals that mean so much in terms of any number one, number two seed, storylines, like previous battles and playoffs and whatnot. But like, man, like it just, I think you are right a little bit that like TL not showing up did make it kind of bean soup. So I guess if I were to have to refine my bean soup a little bit, it is kind of TL for not really showing up in the playoffs. So I guess it's that, but like entertainment value wasn't there for me.
No, and I get what you're saying. The entertainment value wasn't necessarily there because we only saw 3 games, but like that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make is that to me that happened because of Team Liquid.
Yeah, no,
Definitely not
I think
100 Thieves.
you're right.
Yeah, so I guess the Beansoup has to go to them because I think they pretty much underperformed everywhere. I will say I still thought Alfari looked good because
Yeah,
he was getting his leads in lane, but again, he's getting the counter pick pretty much all the time, and so you're supposed to get that. But when it comes to playing through Alfari, the team couldn't do that, and that's where they struggled. And so,
yeah,
but yeah, I
I
still
agree with
thought
that.
Alfari looked pretty good, and yeah, everywhere else they just didn't. Jensen was kind of a non-factor. His TF was kind of useless. He blew
Yeah, he
Viego's
blew. That
flash.
was it.
He blew the Viego's flash in the jungle on one play with his TF ulti.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it. I don't really remember much else good happening there. So yeah, pretty disappointing there. You want to move on?
Yep.
What's next?
We got our international update part 3. Because as we mentioned, World is approaching. Pretty much is going to be like I think it starts the last week of September is when play-ins start. They haven't released dates or anything like that. We do know now that Worlds is going to be held in Iceland again. Basically, they're kind of what I would assume is they're going to reuse the whole MSI setup type thing. Presumably, there's going to be no fans. Like, I don't think we've actually gotten word on that.
If
But
there was fans, they wouldn't go to Iceland, right?
I mean, yeah, true. If there was fans, they would probably, yeah, that
If
is,
you wanted fans in the building, you'd probably go to
you'd go to
Berlin, I think.
That is a good assumption that I think we can roll with. So yeah, they're going to
Yeah.
Iceland. That what we do know is that they are going to Iceland again. And from what I remember, like the MSI setup was super nice. I
Yeah, it
remember
was good.
I thought the venue was nice. I thought the look of the broadcast was nice. I think though that they still were doing the studio broadcast out of the LEC, so it was kind of like a remote
Oh
broadcast
yeah.
in that sense. But it didn't feel like that at all, which was good. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So if we're picturing what Worlds 2020 is going to look like, I think MSI, it being in the same location, same setup, I assume, I think it'll be all good. Like I am expecting good things.
I'm so excited, man. I freaking love Worlds. I can't wait.
All right. So,
Uh, what are the teams?
well,
JNT.
finals are sort of concluding all around the world. The only one that's not finished yet, is the LPL because they have their final between FPX and EDG. EDG made the lower bracket run after dropping early to WE. They lost them 3-2 and then ran through the lower bracket, beat WE again, beat LNG. They're in the finals against FPX. Both of them are already going to Worlds based off of making the finals. Winner goes as number 1 seed, loser goes as number 2 seed, and then the remaining 2 seeds are decided through the regional qualifiers, which if I remember correctly, the teams involved in that are RNG, WE, LNG, and Rare
Oh,
Atom.
is that like or you're guessing?
Yes.
Because
No,
I don't
I'm.
know.
Well, I looked this up yesterday, and if my memory
Okay.
serves me correct, and then the way that it works is, oh shit, I don't remember who's playing who. I think RNG is playing Rare Atom, and then LNG is playing WE. The 2 winners then face each other, and those winners will auto go to Worlds, and then the winners play each other. Winner goes as 3rd seed, loser goes as 4th seed. It's hard to explain. The LPL's playoff bracket and regional bracket is really fucking stupid. Like if you just look at it, like there's just so many matches that they have to play. But what you need to know, FPX EDG are going as 1-2, and then the remaining 2 spots are going to be decided between those 4 teams of RNG,
You said
Rare Atom.
RNG WE are playing each other, right?
I think I said
And then
RNG.
LNG is playing.
I think I said RNG is playing Rare Atom.
No, I got it here. So
Okay.
RNG is playing WE,
Okay.
and LNG is playing Rare Atom. Is what
Okay. Yep.
lol.fandom, the
Yeah.
lol league
Yeah,
PD, I
yeah.
think.
So, but the way it works is the winners from those 2 series will go to Worlds, and then they'll play each other for seeding between 3rd and 4th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the finals is this week for like their like EDG
yeah,
FPX finals, and that's on Thursday, I believe.
yes,
Thursday morning, like 5 a.m. EST. So that's like 2 a.m.
yes,
PST, I believe that's the times. Let me double
yes.
check. Yes. Thursday, September 2nd. So that's coming really soon. That should be hella hype. I gotta watch that. I gotta catch up on some LPL, man. And
By
huge
watch it, you
gauntlet
mean
coming up
watch
for
it
LCK
live
as
or
well.
watch it just like watch the series?
I don't know because at this point I'm staying up really late. So maybe I'll watch it live. I don't know.
Damn.
Doing this
Apparently,
podcast,
I Will
we
Dominate
recorded this.
is.
What?
Oh, well, I was gonna say apparently I Will Dominates. I don't know if he's casting it or if he's on the analyst desk for the English
Mm.
broadcast, but he's involved in it some sort. He
Let me
posted about
see.
it on social media just like a couple hours ago.
Yeah, I mean, I might be watching it live. When we do this podcast, for those that don't know, we're recording right now. It's 2:30 in the morning, and then it's got to be uploaded and stuff like that, which J&T does after. But so like, I don't know. I've been staying up pretty damn late, I guess is what I'm saying. So maybe, maybe I'll be watching it live. I don't know at this point.
Alrighty. So LPL should be exciting. Still like 4 best of 5s that they need to play out to decide world seeding. So like I said, there's still a ways to go on that. However, LEC, they're finished now. They pretty much follow the same schedule as LCS. If you guys didn't tune into the LEC, you missed some really great series this weekend. Even though
Yes.
I think the finals was pretty competitive, but it was pretty clear that Mad Lions was the best team. And then the losers finals was kind of similar to our NA finals, where it was just a stomp.
Yeah, I didn't expect Fnatic to beat Rogue. I thought, I mean,
I
I
think
did
I
think
thought they
that
had a good
Fnatic looked
chance.
good, but I definitely thought that Rogue was gonna win it. And dude, Fnatic is so fun to watch. Okay, let me just say that, guys. If you don't watch Europe yet, just watch Fnatic games, man. They're freaking psychos. They fight everything, and I love it. They are so fun to watch.
Yeah, so
Hylissang is beasting lately. That guy's insane. Yeah. Anyways, I guess I go on and on and on, but I'm excited for Worlds, and I think it's pretty obvious at this
yeah,
point.
so if you didn't see, Mad Lions, they won the finals against Fnatic 3-1. They're the number 1 seed for LEC. Number 2 seed is Fnatic. Number 3 seed is Rogue. They got 0-3'd by Fnatic. Thing that I like for people who don't watch LEC, this is the comparison that I'll make because I think it's a fairly accurate comparison. It feels
Okay.
like Mad Lions and Fnatic are these crazy aggressive LPL teams, and Rogue is this like your classic LCK team who likes to sit back, not super active early game, and kind of scale.
That's what I would say we've seen lately, but I wouldn't have said that about Rogue a month ago. Um,
Yeah.
but I think the comparison is fair. They are really struggling to make things happen early on, so that the comparison isn't wrong. It's just it's kind of fresh, is what I would say.
No, but I think that assessment of Rogue, in my view, kind of like was the same last time we saw them at Worlds. Like they weren't the super aggressive early game team, but was very good
Mm.
at team fighting, and kind
Yeah,
of
I look
playing
at
the
last
map.
year's Rogue as way different though
It
than
was
this year's
different,
Rogue.
yeah.
But anyway, what's next?
Yeah.
Dame one, right? We're
Yeah,
going
well, we
LCK.
got LCK. LCK finished up early on in the weekend. I think their finals was on Saturday, or I guess, yeah, Saturday morning. Damwon won against T1, 3-1. So Damwon's going as the number 1 seed. Gen G is actually going as the number 2 seed
Number
based
two,
off
baby.
championship points. I think the LCK, they're the only region that still does like the championship points thing. Uh,
No, LPL does. That's what their gauntlet thing is for.
oh, I thought it
Or
was
at
just
least it
like,
says championship points and regional finals is what it says on the Leaguepedia thing. So maybe I'm getting confused. I don't know.
oh, okay. Well, nevertheless, Gen G going number 2 seed off of points. And then T1, they have made Worlds, but their seeding is not yet decided because the way that the LCK Gauntlet works is T1 is the final boss in the Gauntlet. But if you make it to the last match of Gauntlet, you've already made Worlds, and winner goes as 3rd seed, loser goes as 4th seed. So at the very least, we are going to see T1 at Worlds. If it's 4th seed, then that means that they're going to go to play-ins. If they're 3rd seed, that means they'll auto go through to the main stage.
And then Sandbox, Live Sandbox, Afrika Freaks, and Hanwha are still going through the
There's
gauntlet.
still
Your
hope for
boys,
Chovy.
your Hanwha boys can still make it.
I'm gonna be honest, they're not gonna win. They're probably gonna get 3-1 in the first series, but there's
Hmm.
still hope for Chovy.
Dude, Afrika and Live Sandbox have actually been good teams. Like
Yeah, they're
the
not bad.
LCK, I will say they're a lot of people are looking at the region as worse this year, and I think it's because their top team isn't like Damwon was way more dominant in spring, and so I think people think that they fell off. But like I will say that like teams like their 1 through 6 were all good teams. Like 1 and 6 were not very far apart, and so it's like this weird thing where maybe their ceiling isn't as high, but like the floor is definitely not as low as a 6 seed should be. Maybe
Also,
Han Weiss.
I don't know if I like is Nongshim like actually not in the regional are they not in the gauntlet at all?
No, I thought they are.
I
I'm
I,
pretty
I
sure
didn't
they are.
write them down. I just wasn't sure because I remember like they
Let
only
me check.
finished they
I'm
only
pretty sure
finished
they are,
third,
but
fourth, and they didn't make playoffs. And
they're the second. last final boss. So Hanwha Life play Live Sandbox, and then the winner of Hanwha and Live Sandbox play Nongshim. I didn't even realize their name was missing.
Oh, yeah, I
But yeah,
just realized that their
and
name.
then
I would think that based off their summer performance that they would at least be in it, but I guess I just forgot to write them down.
yeah, no, and they've looked really good too. They finished third, but I
Yep.
think they finished like
Peanut.
tied for first as far as standings go. Yeah,
What's that?
Peanut's looking good again.
What's the guy that you like from there? Duck Dam.
Dom, their 80 carry. He's great. I like him a lot. Duck Dom. Yeah. So, anyways, the winner of the Nongshim versus either Hanwha or Live Sandbox will go on to play T1 in the Gauntlet Finals, and that'll decide the seeding.
Yeah, yeah. One region I did not put down here, but I was reading about earlier that I will mention because they're a very relevant region, I would say.
Okay.
The PCS, they just finished, I believe, this morning, and PSG Talon actually got their revenge in the grand finals against Beyond Gaming, who Beyond Gaming actually beat them earlier in the playoffs and sent PSG Talon to the lower bracket. PSG Talon, if you didn't know, you probably shouldn't know because PCS is not a very popular region in terms of NA people. They basically smurfed the entire regular season, similar to what they did in Spring Split when they went to MSI and had a really great MSI performance. They did that again in Summer Split. They were the big favorites to win it. It was a pretty big upset when Beyond Gaming actually beat them in the winners finals of playoffs. And then,
Yeah.
they ran through the lower bracket, beat them again in a 5-game series. For people who don't know, Beyond Gaming was actually the team that their sub 80 carry from MSI, Doggo, was playing for. So he played for PSG Talent at MSI. He actually was the Beyond Gaming 80 carry. So we're going to see Doggo at Worlds again. And then we're also going to see all of PSG Talent with their regular 80 carry unified, who was,
Dude, I can't believe PSG went 18-0 in Summer Split, and then
yeah,
then Beyond Gaming took them to 5 games in both of their series.
yep.
3-2.
So Beyond Gaming,
Or
they're
3-2,
not,
3-2.
don't sleep on them.
Yeah.
Plans.
Yeah. Uh, the World's 2022, JT. Spill
Yes,
it.
I'm spelling it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, for us NA boys over here, Worlds is happening in NA 2022.
Yes, man.
I felt
Oh
like
my
we were
god.
talking about this last week, how like we were really hoping that NA isn't gonna get screwed out of another Worlds.
I had no faith, man. I thought we were so screwed. Now, I mean, let's be honest. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here, man. Plans can get canceled. COVID, who knows how many variants of that there's going to be.
Yeah.
So I guess let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. But for now, they planned to stay in North America, and that is exciting. They're going to go to 4 different cities. They haven't said which ones yet. J&T, where are they going, man?
Well,
Where are they going?
it's obviously one's gonna be finals is probably gonna be in LA at the Staples
You
Center
got to
because they
have
always do
LA
that.
and New York,
I would
probably, right?
assume the semifinals are going to be in New York at MSG because how can you not have an event in MSG? So I would think that those are probably the only two places that are for sure. Because from what I remember, they did MSI that one time in like Florida, in like Tallahassee or
Oh,
whatever.
really?
Yeah.
I
Or
don't even
maybe,
remember
oh,
that.
maybe it was All Stars actually. Sorry. Maybe it was that. They've done All
Okay.
Stars also in Vegas before. So
Yes,
that
that
would
I
be kind of
remember.
interesting. In Worlds 2016, they went to Chicago, right?
And San Francisco, I
Yes, and
believe.
San Francisco. And from what I remember, when they went to Chicago, they had like some real shit venue with like not a lot of people. So hopefully, if they go back to Chicago, pick a better venue than that because it was like kind of like a theater with like 2 to 3K seating, which I was like, well, that sucks.
I love Chicago. I've been. I really liked Chicago, but fuck Chicago. Come to Toronto, please.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that they would go to Toronto because I do think that, they would get a lot of people to come if it was held at the Jesus, it's called the Scotiabank Arena now.
Yeah, where the
Cringe.
Maple Leafs play. Dude, the thing is, I wonder if there's a way that they could have it at the Rogers Center. That's where the Blue Jays play, and
That'd be
you
cool.
could fit like 50,000 people in that building.
Yeah, that'd be
If they're
cool.
going like the thing is, if they're going like I don't know how much like the population of the city matters, like how many people are there, because I feel like no matter what, you're gonna fill out, right?
Oh,
But like
well, yeah.
Toronto's a bigger city than Chicago, so I don't know if that
Well, the
matters. Not
GTA
by a lot,
is.
but not by a lot, but
Yeah, the
I don't know
GTA
if
is
that
for
matters
sure.
at all. Yeah. Anyway,
Um,
please come to Toronto, please.
yeah, well, I think a lot of North American fans are hoping that some form of Worlds will be in their respective area so they can go
Area, yeah.
because, myself, I've been to 2 LCS finals before, and I mean, don't get me wrong, those are super, super exciting. Worlds would be so much
Insane.
better.
I don't know how I'm gonna make it there, but I'll find a way. I gotta find a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the thing is, they could go to Texas too. Like I feel like Texas needs an event, right? Did they get one yet?
Well, no, but we're about to say something about that a little bit later.
Yeah, but that doesn't.
I
I mean,
mean,
it
maybe.
does, but yeah. Anyways, they're coming to North America. I'm done
Come
going.
come to think of it though, it would be pretty insane if they had them in like the AT&T Center in Dallas, because that
Yeah,
stadium, it's like newly built, it's fucking huge, and they
that's the
already have.
Cowboys one.
Yeah, I went there in 2015 to a Cowboys Jets game, and the like huge TV they have like mounted to the top is like it's like I don't remember how big they said the screen was, but it's fucking huge. Like it's like
Hmm.
perfect for putting like League of Legends up there or something like that. Like it's just like on all
Interesting.
four sides, it's just like fucking huge.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm too excited. I hope they don't let us down.
Alrighty.
We got other quick news.
Yeah, we got some quick news. Not a whole lot. Some venue stuff that, like I said, we'll get into. First off, um, Riot announced this new program that they're doing called LCS Game Changers, which they're trying to increase, some female esports players, specifically league related.
Yeah, a lot of people in the scene have been pretty vocal that they don't think that females get their fair shot into getting into the LCS, and so this is a method to make that happen. They're going to get some, I believe, LCS level coaching and analysts and stuff like that. And I believe the idea is to have 10 players, and by the end you could have five people or five person teams, and then you could do a 5v5. And I think there's supposed to be an event or something like that. I don't know much more about it than that.
Yeah, I think from what I remember reading about it, it's just going to be fairly small, 10 players, two teams of five, and some LCS resources mixed in there.
Right.
All right, next up. This one's kind of interesting and kind of out of left field. I don't think a lot of people were expecting this. But the
Yeah.
LCS is apparently going to partner with the creators of American Vandal on Paramount Plus to make a mockumentary TV series about the LCS. And for the people who don't know what the hell American Vandal is, what I will say is I did watch the first season of it, and as I kind of mentioned, it's basically a mockumentary, which is kind of like if you don't know what that means, if you know what like the satires genre is of movies, it's like that, but documentary format. So it's like kind of a meme thing. The first season that they ever did of American Vandal was like this documentary that was surrounded by a bunch of like penises that were being drawn at this high school, and it was like pretty funny. It was like a I feel like each episode was about half an hour, and it was 10 episodes. So
Would it almost be? I just thought of this now. Would it almost be kind of like Borat?
yeah, kind of,
Like he goes to America.
kind of. I mean, like that style of, you know,
Okay.
yeah, not.
All
It's not
right.
going to be like Borat at all, but I mean that style of like that's what I mean. Like it's like a satire type thing. Like that's what I'm
Yeah.
expecting it to be. Um, it should
I
be
don't know much
interesting.
about the genre, but I did watch the interview with Chris Greeley about it that Travis did, and basically it sounds like there will be some like maybe some LCS cameos and stuff like that, and some familiar faces. And he also said that the LCS teams have allowed their brands to be used in it, so like their logos and stuff like that. And so maybe we'll see some actual real LCS type stuff. And I believe he said LCS and LOL esports type stuff. So I think that's what he said, if I remember, if my memory serves right. But anyways, that's
It'll be
that's all I
interesting.
know.
I would assume this is probably something that's like a couple years down the pipeline, at least like 1 or 2 years. So,
Yeah. Well, apparently it's already 2 years down the pipeline. I guess he said that he was sitting with one of the guys, maybe the guy, I don't know, maybe one of the people that was working on it. He said he was sitting watching Detroit finals in 2019 and talking about it to give the guy some
oh,
information about. So this could be sooner than we think because it might already be 2 years in the making. Don't know though. Not sure.
already. Next up, the LCS Midseason Showdown, which, if you don't know what the fuck that is, that's basically just spring finals,
Spring
spring
finals.
playoffs. It's happening in Houston on April 23rd to 24th at the NRG Stadium, which is where the Texans play. Very nice stadium. I've also been there. And maybe I'll be going there when that happens because I'm only like a 2.5 hour drive away.
And that's the Texas thing that you were alluding to before, like 10 minutes ago or
Yes.
whatever, when we
So
were
maybe,
talking
who
about.
knows? That goes well. They might be a venue for Worlds.
Yeah, he said COVID permitting, which is like, duh, at this point. Pretty much everything's COVID permitting, I think.
And then
Um,
to sort of to give New Jersey another shot. Chris Greeley also said that the New Jersey finals that are going to be in 2023 summer, they're going to go back to New Jersey at the Prudential Center. So hopefully people in that area can still get that sort of experience and whatnot.
Yeah, the one thing I want to call out a good friend of ours, a regular listener, Manders. Uh, we were when I posted the mid-season showdown thing, he got confused because mid-season showdown, like it sounds like MSI, right? I don't know. I'm pretty sure he thought it was MSI. And so when I told him
Oh.
like that it was in Houston, he's like, I might go to that. And I was like, you might, you will, it's just spring finals. Like you're gonna go all the way to Texas for that? And he's like, wait, what? It's just spring finals? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, well, that's misleading. Maybe I won't go to that.
I do. It just we talked about this like when spring finals was rolling around in the first place. Like mid-season showdown just doesn't have like that
It's
ring to it.
bait. It's bait,
It
man.
just
It
like
sounds like
it's
MSI, but it's not.
spring playoffs. Like that's what it is. Like don't make it
Yeah.
seem like it's something else. All right.
Yeah.
Last up, another thing that was in Chris Greeley's interview that was pretty surprising. I didn't actually watch it myself, but Blue Jay did.
I
But
did.
apparently, he's going to be stepping down as LCS commissioner with a new one to be hired very, very soon.
Yeah, he said within the next 2 or 3 weeks in the interview. So I don't know when they interviewed. Probably the interview was pretty recent. It was released on the 28th of August. So probably
That's 2
recorded
days
it not
ago.
long before that. So yeah, I would imagine that there's going to be a new commissioner announced in the near future, and so that's kind of cool. Nothing really too crazy about that. I mean, I don't think there was any hard feelings one way or another about Chris Greeley, but it looks like he's only interim commissioner for the time being until they find someone else to take the spot. So
Yeah, I mean, even
interesting.
even even when you told me that, I feel like that was a little bit surprising because from my view of Chris Greeley, it's always felt like he's been a guy to implement change pretty quickly in terms of, listening to the community response and kind of adjusting things to make them as good as they can possibly be. I think, everything that he might have done hasn't always turned out exactly the best or how, the way that everyone's wanted it to be. But I think he's
Yeah,
been one to, move things along pretty quickly and in an
absolutely.
attempt to make change for good. So I feel like, kind of a bit sad, I think, that we like,
I've had criticisms of Greeley. I have, but one thing I will always give him praise for is that he was never afraid to try something new. It sounds like I'm giving a eulogy, like he died or something. But he was never afraid to try something new, like the new format that they had this year. A lot of people liked it. A lot of people didn't like it. The 15 games every weekend or the spring split counting and going into summer. Like so, that's something that I always appreciated about him, and so that's something that we might miss with the new commissioner. Who knows? Who knows?
yeah, I wonder like even who it's gonna be. If it's gonna be like some no-name guy that like nobody knows about, or if it's gonna be like
Like
somebody like,
Jet or something.
dude, then he'll get like fired again and go back to casting.
It's gonna be Jet. He's got a new role.
Well, like,
He's been
okay,
a player. He's been a caster. He's been a coach. He was on the balance team. Now he's commish, baby. Jet the commish.
okay. Well,
That's
here's the thing. If Jet, like, okay, obviously, I don't think that we think that Jet's gonna be the commissioner of the LCS. But
that's
if,
my pick.
okay, well, do we like, dude? Do you think he'll like go back to casting again? Like, I
I
would.
do. I actually think he will be casting. If I'm being serious, I think like how do I say this nicely? There are other talents on the LCS broadcast that have not had the experience to catch up to Jet's level yet.
Yeah.
That's a nice way of putting it,
Actually,
right?
you know what? I got a good one for you. How about let me give you
Oh
a
no.
let me pitch you a scenario and tell me if you're down for this.
Okay.
Instead, Jet will cast, but instead he'll go to LCK and replace Wolf on the English broadcast.
What the hell? I'll take that. But wait, where does Wolf go? Does he gotta go somewhere?
Uh, no, he can just never be seen
I
ever
know I'm
again.
sounding really harsh, but yeah.
I
I
don't
thought
know.
you were gonna say crumbs. Commish
Oh,
crumbs.
no, 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 no. Dude, but it does kind of feel like Jet's kind of like he's on this like Brett Favre kind of train where like he's kind of like retiring from casting and then just like will come back to it and like he's now like on his third stint potentially and it'll be I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I'll welcome Jet back. Like he's a great caster. I
I
think
love Jet. I think he's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
him and Azale or him and like Kobe, like they're always great. And
Bring him on the dive. I wonder if
yeah,
that means Mark loses his job on the dive. I mean, he doesn't lose his job, but yeah, I think he did replace
what if
Jet.
they just add Jet back?
That's too many people. Well, I don't think it's too many people. I think they don't want more than 3 people because They usually try to keep their episodes short. They're always trying to keep it an hour, and
Well,
then sometimes it like
I,
goes over an
I don't
hour or
watch
something.
the dive as much as I used to, but is it mainly that like sorry, Kobe and Azale are usually like the standard guys, and then Mark will kind of
And
like
Mark.
occasionally.
No,
Well,
no,
but
no. Mark's the standard as well.
or is it just that Freak is the normal, like he's the sub for whenever somebody can't
Freak
come?
is the normal sub, but the thing is, they've all been off at some point. Like they've all been either sick or they're on a vacation or something like that. That the joke this year is that Freak is their sub, but he's not really a sub because he's in so many episodes. Yeah.
Well, it from what I could remember, like it felt like Mark Z was like missing the most, and like that was where like Freak
Maybe.
got. I mean, maybe I don't know.
I don't know. I listen every week, but I don't really remember who's been gone and whatnot. I know Freak's been on a lot, but yeah. Okay, that's it for this episode, right?
I think so.
Let's give a heads up to everyone. We don't know if there's an episode next week. If there is content to do an episode, we will do one. If there is not, we will not. And it's pretty much that simple. JNT still traveling for a little bit, right? So I don't know when live shows are going to start again. Do you refresh my memory? When the hell are you back in Texas?
I mean, the earliest live show that we would do would be Monday, September the 13th.
Okay, so a
And like,
couple weeks.
well, and I mean, like I did mention, we haven't actually got any, dates released yet for Worlds. If I were to extrapolate based on previous Worlds start times, I would think that Worlds probably starts that last week of September. So at the very least, if for whatever reason we had no more episodes, the next one at the very, very least would be September the 27th. But I would think that we would probably do one or two beforehand if we wanted to, talk about the
We're
Worlds
definitely going to
teams.
try,
Yeah, we're
right?
definitely going to try. But at the very, very least, if you don't see us for a month, September 27th, but I think most likely at the very least there'll be one on the 20th of September because that'll be the week before Worlds, and there could be one even next week if there's any major news and whatnot. But
Yeah. And like I mentioned earlier, how I wanted to shout out you guys that keep coming back every week. We want to put out an episode for you guys that continue to come back every week. So, like I said, we will do our best to make an episode. We want to. We just don't know if there's going to be enough content to do it. I'm not going to waste everyone's time and talk for an hour or 2 hours if we don't have anything to say. That's not fair to people that come back every week.
yeah,
Anything else, J&T?
oh, I think that's it.
Okay. Well,
NA
I do this every
over.
week. Yeah, what a good year though. It was nice. This was our first full year of Clown Fiesta podcast. So
Yeah,
we got our nice little community, and you guys keep coming back, and so we appreciate you. And for those that are new, remember to sub. We want them subs. We're actually only like a couple away from 200 subs on YouTube, so please hit that sub button. It will help us a lot. And this week we'll try to get our episode out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, right,
yeah,
J&T?
I forgot.
To
I
be
was.
fair, to be fair, J&T was up really late last week, guys. So while I do give him a hard time for forgetting to put it up, I didn't even know it wasn't up. I just thought it was
Yeah,
up
see,
on
blame
Spotify,
him
and
because he normally is the one that checks.
I do I don't check every week because I normally like I re-listen
Huh.
to our
So I could have
episodes,
just
but
been forgetting every week then. Okay.
well, yeah, but I mean, it's not in your interest to forget every week. I didn't think I had to check. I normally check for the audio. I'm not checking to see if it's uploaded usually. I'm like, oh, let's see how our audio was this week or whatever it is. But I'm rambling on as per usual at the end of our episodes. Thank you guys so much. We will see you when we see you. And this has been episode 57 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. We love you.
Bye bye.